Welcome back into the Rounding Third podcast. I'm Nick. We got Harrison and Sean. How we doing tonight, fellas?
Good, boys. What's up?
Good. How we doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. All right. Before we get going, make sure you follow and like us on Facebook. You can subscribe on YouTube. We're also trying to put it up on Spotify and our Apple podcast, but we're still playing with that a little bit. So hang in there, and we'll let you know when we can get it all up there. All right. We're going to lead off tonight with some Red Sox news. The Red Sox signed Jorge Alfaro with opt-outs on June 1st and July 1st. Do we like this signing as a backup catcher? I mean, I know a couple weeks ago we were talking about like who is the backup catcher.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's going to be him. The deal was for a minor league deal. Like they signed him for a minor league deal, but he's not going to be down there for long, especially if he plays like he just did in the Dominican League.
Yeah, I mean, the guy hits. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He hits. You know, I mean, for a backup catcher, I mean, Harrison probably he's better at this than I am with the defensive metrics. He probably has that, but I don't know what he is defensively. But the guy hits.
Yep.
I mean, that's never been a question. And if he's, excuse me, if he's your backup catcher and the guy hits at a ridiculous rate and he ends up playing more games because Reese McGuire can't keep up with him, then that's a good problem to have. You know, I don't know the opt-outs. I don't know, Nick, or either Harrison, if you know either. Is it a team, like a club opt-out, or is it a player opt-out? I'm not sure.
It's him.
It's him. Okay.
The player opt-out. Yeah.
Yep.
So I like the signing. I mean, it's kind of a like low risk, high reward situation. If it doesn't pan out, I mean, I don't know. I like it. It adds some extra thump. And not to get on a Red Sox tangent here, I like the moves the Sox have made. Obviously, losing Xander sucks. And I think we talked about it last week, or maybe the week before. This is Cora's opportunity to prove that he's a top-tier manager, which I believe he is. I think last year was not his best year. I don't think he had a great roster. But I don't think he did a great job with what he had. There are pieces within this clubhouse that if he manages the right way, which I believe he will, he can get the most out of this lot. Like, this is a team that can do pretty well. Are they going to win 100 games? No. But it's a roster, I think, that if you maximize the potential of them by, resting guys when they need to rest, stoking guys that need to be stoked, putting them in the right place in the I think they could score some runs. I think they'll score some runs, and I'm excited to see it. I think Alfaro is going to be a decent part of that because I think he can hit. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point about Cora, I mean, in 2021 we saw that. Like, we saw a guy that played all the right guys at all the right times and got the max he could out of that team. And last year it was, kind of a hot mess, and he didn't help himself, but he also wasn't working with a lot. And it'd be nice to see this team get back into a more stable footing and see what they really can do. So I like the Alfaro signing. The Red Sox seem to be really high on Reese McGuire. He's considered to be one of the top tier defensive catchers. He hits a little bit. They feel like he'll hit more in a better lineup with better people around him and with more opportunities. But Alfaro can hit. He's considered an average defensive catcher. He's not great. He's not bad. He's not a liability back there. The guy can, he's a 250 or so career hitter, I think, but he's got some pop. And he might add a dimension that Reese McGuire doesn't have. But what I will say is that I feel like that's the one position in baseball that's like the least appreciated is the backup catcher. Like,
yeah, I agree.
Those guys, that is such a tough gig. You spend so much time in the bullpen working with pitchers, with the pitching coach, in the room as part of the game plan. You don't get a lot of chances for extra at bats. You don't get consistent at bats. Like, that's a really hard gig. And that's partially why the Red Sox gave him these opt-outs, whereas if he's not on the big league roster or he's not getting playing time in June or July, he has the right to say, look, guys, I'm out. I don't want to do this. Because he did have other options. But he's coming here because I think he likes the opportunity. So I think it's a great signing. Again, like Sean said, low risk, potentially high reward, solid player. And I do, to kind of go off into more of the Red Sox stuff, I'm liking what I'm seeing from them now, that there's a path developing, and I can see what they're trying to do here with the signings they've made. This is going to be a team probably kind of like the 21 team where they're going to be deep. They're going to be deep. The Trevor Story, that's a big hit. But they're gonna do what Bill Belichick's always done. They're gonna bring in a bunch of guys to spring training, put the best 25 out there, and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, that's us being fairly educated baseball fans, but I mean, the fans this weekend at Winter Weekend let Chaim Bloom and Sam Kennedy have it, and they let them have it. It was quite the video clip to hear the fans just giving it to him. But
yeah, and Jared Carabas, who is kind of the moderator there, was really needling them on the Xander thing, and quite honestly, they need to hear that. They need to hear the fans aren't happy. The fans are not loving what they're doing. The flip side of it is they're not doing a terrible job. They're just not doing a very good job telling us what it is they're doing. And now that the pieces are starting to come together, I kind of see what they're up to, and I don't hate it, but it still hurts when you see all these big players signing somewhere else, and Boston, a top 5 market, is working with a bunch of random guys that are going to come to spring training.
Right.
I just don't. I do not blame them one bit for not signing for 11 years. 11 years is ridiculous.
Nope. Totally get it.
We said during last year's season, I mean, we had said that the Red Sox, one thing they didn't want to do at the shortstop position was logjam it for the guy that they believe is going to be the next legitimate shortstop in the organization, which is Marcel Lemare. I mean, for as much as we can hammer the Red Sox on like saying that the fans aren't clued into what their plan is, which, you know, maybe they could have done a better job. I feel like they have been very straightforward, at least on this issue about Marcel Lemare.
Yes.
Like, this is the guy we want. We're going to bring him up the right way. We're going to develop him slowly. We're going to make sure that he's ready at every level before we move him on. Like, this is the guy that we want to take. So if we knew that as fans, we then can't hammer them for not signing Xander for 10 or 11 years. Like, it's just, you can't have it both ways.
Right.
Which when I said at the end of the season that I had a gut feeling that he would be back, I thought it would be at like 6 years for like $40 million a year. Like, I thought it was going to be, listen, we'll give you the money, but we're not giving you the years. And he wanted the years, and good luck. I wish him the best.
Yeah. And the indications are they offered him a contract that was 6 years at $30 million plus, and he said, "No, I'm out."
He said no.
But the same fans that were booing Chaim Bloom, I can't imagine would have been applauding an 11-year, $280 million deal for Xander. Like, I just don't see that being a big win.
No, I agree.
All right.
Typical Boston fans, they want it both ways.
Yeah, that's how it is. All right. Huge trade this week. The batting champ of the AL, Luis Arias, goes to the Miami Marlins for Pablo Lopez. Who wins this trade? Is this a win for the trade for the Twins because it gets them in contention of the AL Central? I mean, and then does it do anything for the Marlins?
Yeah. I mean, listen. As with any trade in any sport, the winner losers of the trade we'll know that 3-4 years from now. It's not something we're going to know right now. I think in the short term, it helps Minnesota with the pitching aspect.
Yep.
Right. I mean, like, you get a legitimate bona fide stud to come over, and that's great.
Yeah.
You lose the batting champ, though. Like, that's a legitimate second base piece that you lost that now goes to Miami, who says that Jazz Chisholm is going to play in center. So you just added a legitimate bat to your lineup while not losing the bat at second base and adding him to center, which, by the way, did you hear that he said that he's going to win a Gold Glove in center? I love him.
Yep.
I know. He's such a cocky dude.
Baseball needs more Jazz Chisholm. I love him. And I agree with what he said. He said, listen, if you're going to play me there, then play me there full time and I will win you a Gold Glove.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt that he can do it either. This guy is an electric factory.
Yeah.
So I think it helps both teams in the short term. We'll see what happens in the long term. You know, I mean, we've talked to Miami many times over about just the disgusting depth they have pitching wise. So, like, yeah, while it sucks to lose Pablo Lopez, like, you just have another horse that you could just backfill it. Like that.
Right.
That's not going to kill them that much. And they just added a stud second base bat. And I think it works for both. I really do.
And we knew that deal was coming, or something of that nature was coming, because of the Johnny Cueto signing. We knew We knew
we
at
thought,
some point one of those pieces were going to move, and it did this week in a big way. I never would have expected them to get rid of Arias in that, though. I mean, that's a big table set at the top of your lineup, and you know Byron Buxton is hurt week 2.
Yeah, I mean, and Arias, he's a spark plug. He plays just about every day. He's 25 years old. He's only going to get better. I actually look at this. I think the Marlins won this deal, and I say that because, one, like you mentioned, Nick, they're trading from a position of strength here. They've got 39 stupid stud arms for 5 spots. And when you kind of read the organization's take on Pablo Lopez, he's the oldest, and they view that he's the one that's peaked. So they look at him as the easiest one to discard. I mean, the guy was 10-10 with a 3.75 ERA this year. He's got great stuff, but he's not like a shutdown pitcher like an Alcantara is, or like some of these young arms coming up behind him are. He's good. Like, he's a really talented pitcher. But you're giving up a batting champion at 25 for Pablo Lopez, who's almost 27, who's never pitched more than 180 innings, which is still in today's world, that's a good number. He set a career high last season, but the Marlins viewed him as the one guy they could easily get rid of and easily backfill. And Arias now is a cornerstone piece they can build around.
Yeah. I mean, he was like Pablo Lopez was, you didn't even hear about Alcantara until the middle of the year. Pablo Lopez was dealing the first 2 months of the year. And everyone's like, dude, this guy's a stud. And then Alcantara was just like out of nowhere, and he just took over and ran with it. But yeah, I think this is your middleman Dan answer, like Sean always says. I think this helps the Twins immediately. I think this helps them get into contention with the Guardians for this AL Central. And who knows with this balanced schedule, again, we keep bringing that up. We just don't know what that's going to look like. But I feel like this helps the Twins possibly get to the top. Yes, you lose a bat, but you have a guy that's going to come in and give you a huge chance to win 20-plus times of the year. That's going to help them stay at the top and maybe get them over the hump of the Guardians in the AL Central. But Arias might help the Marlins in the long run because he's so young.
Yep.
And he's there, and Chisholm's only going to get better in center, and now you have 2 cornerstone pieces in that Marlins franchise at 2 pretty important positions up the middle. Yeah. Like, they're solid up the middle. They're pitching, they're second base, and they're center field. I mean, if they still kept Miguel Rojas, I mean,
yeah,
man, I don't know what the Marlins are doing there, but unless they really like the package they got back, I don't know that whole package they got back, but I mean, they would be really solid up the middle, and you could bring in some veterans and be in contention. Are they still a little ways away? Yeah, that NL East is insane. But I mean, it looks like they're trying to make moves and trying to compete there a little bit.
Yeah, and as we've mentioned, the one thing the Twins have been missing the last few years is top tier pitching. Pablo Lopez gives them a solid, maybe not number 1, but certainly a really solid number 2. And Arias hurts to give up, but that's unfortunately the cost of young pitching these days. You're going to give up a boatload for any good young arm. So,
yeah. Aroldis Chapman signs with the Kansas City Royals. This deal kind of came out of nowhere. I was like, why this deal? You got the specs on it, right, Harrison?
Yeah. So what's interesting, so from what I was reading today, Chapman this is an interesting, it's not an interesting contract so much. It's an interesting situation where Chapman, so he had 2 other offers. One was the Padres, because the Padres are signing everybody kind of like the Mets. And the other one, I can't remember who it was. And then he had the Royals. He was offered more money by the other organizations. The Royals offered him a salary and some incentives, but the Royals told him, "You'll be our closer." And that's what Aroldis Chapman was looking for. He's trying to reestablish himself as a closer. Last year, the last couple of years have been bad for him. So he's trying to basically create value for himself and reestablish himself as a closer. The only team willing to let him close was the Royals. So his deal with the Royals is basically, I'm going to be your closer, and if I'm putting up good numbers, you're going to trade me, right? And effectively, this is almost like a tryout that the Royals are going to take advantage of for a little while. He's going to go in, try to reestablish himself as a closer. If he does, he'll get traded. If he doesn't, he'll just finish off the season in Kansas City as a, another subpar arm on a subpar team, and then he'll go on his way. So this is kind of one of those prove it sort of deals where he's trying to earn his way back onto a contender as the closer. That is he's adamant that he wants to be a closer again.
Yeah. So the MLB released their top 10 third basemen right now. As we sit on this day, January 23rd of 2023, MLB Network released their top 10 third basemen right now. I'm just going to give you the top 5 and let it marinate for a second. Manny Machado, number 1. Jose Ramirez, number 2. Austin Riley, number 3. Rafael Devers, number 4. Nolan Arenado, 5th. I'm going to stop there because how in the actual hell is Nolan Arenado 5th on that list?
I mean, this dude is like knocking on the door of maybe like the greatest third baseman of all time, and he's considered the 5th best third baseman right now. And he's behind talented guys. This was a dude that was the MVP runner-up last season. Put up monster numbers, and is considered widely as one of the top handful of third basemen ever. It just, these rankings kill me year after year after year. Nolan Arenado gets zero respect from the writers, from the media. They just don't see his value when year after year he is always in the top 2 or worst case 3 third baseman or players in all of baseball. Like it's silly.
Yeah, I think Nick and I were kind of talking before we started here. I think Arenado's the guy who, like, he's a victim because he makes things look so easy. Like, the numbers are ridiculous. Like, the Gold Glove numbers, the Silver Slugger numbers, the MVP seasons, the continuous slash lines of, a billion and a billion. Like, it's like the numbers are there, but when you watch him, he just makes it look so easy. Like, He makes defense look so easy. He makes, working tough pitches in 9-pitch at-bats that end in gap doubles look so easy. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like he's a victim to these writers because they're just like, well, he just does it every year. Like, you
take him
had,
for granted.
Like Rafi's up on the list, right? And I think Rafi belongs on the list. Do I think he's above Nolan? No. And I love Rafi. Mm-hmm. But like Rafi had a season last year when he, this was the season for him to show out because it was essentially a contract year. And he did. He showed out on a bad team and he was fantastic. And people go, oh, well, look at what Rafi did. But you look at Nolan, who had probably a better season number-wise, but he just does it every year. Like, it's just what he does, It's like it's just what he does. So it's almost like people look at what Nolan Arenado did last year, and then the year before that, and then the year before that, and they go, "Well, he's not getting any better, right? Like he's not. His numbers aren't going up.
You can't get better.
That's what I'm saying. It's like the numbers aren't going up, so like he must be slipping. It's like no, he's just disgustingly good every year.
6 seasons of 30 and 100. You have 10 Gold Gloves, 6 Platinum Gloves. You have won a Gold Glove every year you've been in the league. Every single year. And 6 Platinum Gloves.
He's disgusting.
How are you not number 1? Listen, no disrespect to Manny Machado. He's just as good on both sides of the ball too. But he's still not Nolan Arenado. I'm sorry.
No. Nope.
No, and not only that, but like Nolan Arenado. So since 2016, he's played 160 games, 159, 156, 155, 48 during the COVID season, 157, 148. The guy plays every friggin' day. He's out there every friggin' day. And consistently, I mean, last year, he hits 293 with 30 and 103. I mean, his numbers offensively, he's as good as or better than everybody on that list. Defensively, it's not even a discussion. Like there's Nolan Arenado, like way up here, and then everybody else. Like there's no competition. No, zero. But Sean's right. Like he does it year in, year out, ho-hum, Arenado, Gold Glove, Platinum Glove, 300, 30 home runs, blah, blah, blah. He's like a friggin' robot. And it just doesn't get anybody's attention anymore. They just expect it now.
It's crazy. I mean, it doesn't shock me. I mean, just the media messing up, lists and Hall of Fame votes, which we'll get to in a little bit. But it just doesn't shock me anymore. But
the guy, he's been in the top 5 in the MVP voting 4 times.
Yeah,
never won it.
I mean, I guess if you want to put him second behind Manny Machado, fine.
No,
but you can't put the dude fifth.
No,
four top 5s. Yeah, 4 top 5s, 6 top 8s, and he's a robot in terms of the performance, and he's number 5.
I get it. I totally get it. I'm just making an argument right now. Like, if you want to put him behind Manny Machado, fine, but you can't put the dude fifth behind Austin Riley and Rafael Devers. You can't.
Nope.
You can't.
No, I mean, you could make an argument that like they're 1A and 1B right now, but what Arenado does in the field, I still think is better than what Machado does, because Machado's a lot of flash, but he's not quite as solid as Arenado. But it goes back to, again, flash, and that's what Arenado's not. He is a robot.
Yep.
Yes.
Crazy. All right, we're gonna move on to our 5th inning, where we chose our best 3 pitchers to throw the split-fingered fastball. And we did have some response, so I will throw those out first, and then we can go over our list. Rudy said, the Japanese pitchers seem to have this pitch in their arsenal when they come over. As a Yankees fan, Tanaka relied on it often. Pretty nasty when he kept it down. Otherwise, it went a long, long way.
Yeah, well, that's the splitter.
Yep. Yeah. And then Jim Britt commented Kurt Schilling. So I mean, those were the
Schilling's
2.
Good one. Yep.
Those were the 2 we got.
I mean, Schilling and Clemens changed their careers when they developed the splitter.
Yeah,
like absolutely. That changed their career.
Yep. Do you want to give your 3, Harrison?
Yeah. So my 3 were number 1 for me was Hideo Nomo. That was probably the first splitter I ever really saw that was like bottom falling out ridiculous. You combine that with that ridiculous windup, and I don't know how anybody ever touched that pitch.
So
Nomo splitter. Kevin Gausman, he's actually got a really, really good splitter.
Yeah.
And it's got almost like a wobble to it too. He throws this freakishly bizarre splitter, but it's nasty. He's got the highest chase rate in baseball off that pitch, and one of the highest of all time, because it's gone. Yeah. And then third for me was Clemens, because that pitch ultimately changed his career when he was done until he found the splitter, and then all of a sudden he became Roger Clemens again.
Yep. Great ones. Sean, your 3?
I had Roger too. I think, disgusting splitter. You talk about the revival of his career on it. You look back on some of those Roger Clemens highlights, and a lot of it is just blowing people away with the fastball and just disgusting splitters in the dirt. And it's just one or the other.
Yeah, just so many bad swings and misses.
Another one who I think he's new in the league, obviously, but I think Shohei's is already elite level splitter, because he has that triple-digit gas that he throws at your letters, and then he'll drop like a 91, 92 splitter. And you talk about the bottom falling out, disgusting. Just absolute nosedive. Second, and then Bruce Sutter for the 3rd one. One of the best relief pitchers of all time.
Yep.
Had, I think, 300 saves, I think. He had another just disgusting split-fingered fastball, which I think he comes out and says he wouldn't have nearly the career that he had if it wasn't for the splitter. Like, that was his pitch. It wasn't his secondary pitch. It wasn't his out pitch. Like, that was his pitch. So those are my 3.
So first 2 for me are Kurt Schilling, Roger Clemens.
Yeah.
And then I went with the Red Sox homer pick with Koji Urahara. Koji.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, Koji splitter was gross, and he almost exclusively used that pitch.
Yeah, almost like Mariano with the cutter.
Yeah.
You know who I was thinking too, Red Sox homer wise, was Papelbon. In his heyday, Papelbon had a disgusting splitter.
Yeah.
Problem with. Go ahead.
Well, and the funny thing is, his splitter was really just like a changeup that he couldn't throw very well, so it turned into a splitter.
Right. I would get frustrated because there was nobody that made saves more complicated than Papelbon.
Oh my God.
I mean, this guy, I have no idea if the numbers back this up, but like from my point of view, nobody had less 1, 2, 3 saves than Papelbon. Every time he came out, it was a hit batsman or if it was a double off the monster. It's like, what is this guy doing? And then he would bear down, and then that splitter would be unhittable, and he'd find a way to do it.
Yeah.
But like, it was never easy, and you'd tense up when he came up on them. But that splitter was good. That was another one that I was thinking of.
The heart attack closer. Gotta love those guys.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, he was. But I want to say his splitter was almost like a palm ball or something like that. He just couldn't throw very well as a changeup, and it had this crazy movement on it. But he scared the hell out of you every time he came in.
Yeah.
But and somebody made a comment on the Facebook page, and they're right. And we see it consistently. These pitchers that come from Japan, that is a mainstream pitch in Japan. Like they throw a splitter like the Americans throw a curveball. It's a big pitch in Japan because they don't generally have the same velocity. So that movement is super deceptive. But Ohtani, Ohtani throws so hard, and because he's so tall and lanky, like that thing is on
so
you.
Effective. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it before. It's almost like the style of pitchers that come over. You know, they pitch away from contact. It's such a different philosophy of pitching than kind of what the American pitchers and then also the Latin American pitchers have, where it's more just like swing and miss stuff, overpowering fastballs, sliders, get you to chase. They don't they're avoiding contact. Like over there, like a great stat line over there is like 12 Ks but 8 walks. They're like, they don't care about walks. They're like, whatever. Like, look at the 12 Ks. Like that's so it's different. Like, you know, that's why they come over with the, you know, Daisuke with the gyro ball, right? Like, it's all about, like, what can we get them off balance to swing and miss rather than just, like, I trust my stuff. So they do. They all seem to have great – if it's not a splitter, they all have, like, gross sliders. Like, it's all movement stuff that they have.
Yeah. Well, I was going to use Daisuke as the example because he used to drive us all crazy because he had a good fastball. He had good stuff. But he was afraid to catch the plate with any of it. And you'd look up and he'd be walking off the mound after 4 2/3 with 115 pitches, 8 Ks, and you're like,
right,
come on, man, like you finish, like, but they don't like contact, and it's pretty consistent.
I remember every outing just yelling at you, just go after him, like, just go after him,
throw a strike,
just like God, just challenge a guy one time, just go at him.
I wouldn't mind him nibbling if it didn't take him 4 hours to deliver each pitch.
Yeah. Imagine that dude on a pitch clock.
That doesn't bother me as much. I know. That part doesn't bother me as much, but it's like, just challenge a guy.
Yeah.
Just go at him.
I agree.
That dude he was a human rain delay.
If I had to watch another 3-0 gyro ball that wasn't even close, it's like, good Lord, man. They're not swinging anyways. You might as well get the strike.
Right.
Yep.
Oh. Crazy. All right.
I
think we have like one or two more pitches left, and then we'll be done with that segment. I don't think we're going to do a slider here at some point. Maybe that will be next week, so we'll discuss it and then throw that question out on the Facebook page next week. We're going to move on to our 7th inning, where we've been releasing our all-time teams. We did the AL the last 3 weeks. We are now in the National League. Which is kind of cool because we have a DH spot now, but it's just kind of a spot for a 4th outfielder.
Yeah, right. Yep.
So it's just kind of like
the guy whose bat you want that you can't add somewhere else.
Exactly. So it's like the 10th player, but actually the 9th because we can fit him in the DH spot. So we'll start in the NL East. I keep saying AL. Goodness gracious. NL East, and we'll start with Harrison did the Montreal Expos and Washington Nationals lineup. So go ahead with that one.
Yeah, so this was interesting because you go into the Expos archives and history, and boy, there's really not a lot there. But and what's interesting is the flip side of that too is that the Expos had so many great players come through, but nobody ever stayed. Like they're all there for like 3 seasons and gone.
They made their name with other franchises.
Yeah, exactly. So for the Nats, I had Gary Carter behind the plate, Andres Galarraga at first, Jose Vidro at second. That's a name I hadn't heard in a long time.
Love that pick. Love that pick.
Yep. I was flipping back through it. I'm like, man, Jose Vidro, he was so fun to watch. Ryan Zimmerman, who was their Iron Man. He was
steady.
Yeah, he put the Nationals kind of on the map. Ian Desmond at short, another guy, was a kind of a rock there beside Ryan Zimmerman when they reestablished the Nats as a legitimate team. The outfield is all Expos: Tim Raines, Andre Dawson, Vladimir Guerrero, and I took Bryce Harper as the DH. And then on the mound, I took Strasburg as the starter and Jeff Reardon, who's the career saves leader for the Expos, as the relief pitcher.
Reardon's a good one.
Yeah.
You know who
Yeah.
else had a pretty good run? I feel like maybe in my brain it was longer than – I'll have to look it up. But you know a guy first, maybe probably a short period of time, Tyler Clippard.
Yep.
Coming out of the pen for Washington was – I have no idea what his numbers were. I just like in my brain watching them play, I'm like, that guy's got some stuff. And I know we pitched for Team USA and one of the WBCs. He was pretty good. He was a pretty good arm.
Yeah. So you, I mean, people were like Pedro Martinez, Randy Johnson. Yeah, but they weren't they were exposed for like a half hour.
For such a short period of time.
Dennis Martinez, I thought was a good one. Dennis Martinez. Yeah. But again, like he played his career with the Dodgers. He played it with, a whole bunch of people as well. So
Pedro could work if there wasn't a Steven Strasburg.
Right, exactly.
Right. Like if there wasn't a Steven Strasburg, like sure, Pedro. But Strasburg, he was drafted number 1 overall. He was supposed to be a savior, and then he was a savior. Like he had all the pressure of an entire organization right after they relocated. He put it all on his shoulders, and he still had a Hall of Fame career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and one pitcher I'm pretty sure, as Ken mentioned him, was Steve Rogers. He was actually my original pick, and then when I really thought about, that time period for the Expos and also where the Nationals had been, I flipped it to Strasburg because, drafting him was like really like a changing of the era. It made the Nats a legitimate team. He was the first big, kind of the first big name they took in a draft that came all the way through. So, and then of course with the World Series win, he was a huge part of that. So I took him for more of his impact. Steve Rogers was there for like 13 seasons. He put up stupidly good numbers while he was there. I took Strasburg more because I think that's really what legitimized the Nats. Was really, he was that guy that brought it all together.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I would have gone with, if it was I would have took Strasburg as well.
All right. Sean, we'll save your New York Mets for last. So go ahead and do your Miami/Florida Marlins.
My Marlins. So behind the plate, I excuse me, I had Pudge. And I know he was only there for 1 year. I get it. The 1 year he was there, they win the World Series. He's NLCS MVP. He had a slash line that started with a 300 average. He had like 30 home runs or 25 home runs, 87 RBIs. I mean, he was already an established player from Texas. Yes, he had already won like 10 Gold Gloves or whatever the ridiculous number was, and it was only 1 year. But it was the year. It was the year. So I had him. Probably not the most popular one at catcher, and I get that. But that's where I went. For first base, I ended up with Jeff Conine. Jeff Conine was there for 4 years his first stint, and then another 3 years. So what's that, 7 years? Was there for both World Series, 1997 and 2003. Jeff Conine was just a legitimately really, really good player. Just versatile player. Could play the outfield. I have him at first base. But Conine was my first base. I like Derek Lee a lot. Like I think Derek Lee is really good. And it was 1A, kind of 1A, 1B, but I ended up going with Conine. And then second base, I really, really wanted to pick Dan Uggla because for like the 4 or 5, he had like 4 straight years of 30 bombs.
He was so good for the time he was there.
He was just a liftoff machine.
Yep.
And like I wanted to so bad, but I can't. I mean, you can't. It's Luis Castillo, right?
Yep.
I mean, it has to be.
Yep.
It has to be. Don't outsmart yourself, Luis Castillo. Shortstop Hanley.
Yeah. No.
People forget how disgusting his numbers were in that franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 1 Rookie of the Year, however, 6 Silver Sluggers, whatever it was. I mean, he was so gross. Third base, Mike Lowell, only because I have Miguel Cabrera as my DH. So third base, Mike Lowell. Left field, Derek Lee. Lee, at left. I know we can go other directions. I love Derek Lee.
Yep.
I still think of it, even though it's weird, even though when I first think Derek Lee, I think Cubs. but still left field for Miami. Juan Pierre in center.
Yep.
Big part. They don't win 2003 without Juan Pierre.
No.
Big part of that 2003 team. Right field, Giancarlo Stanton. Obviously, I think that's pretty straightforward. Starting pitcher. I wanted to go Jose Fernandez, but I don't think he pitched there. He was 3-4 years. Like, he wasn't there long enough. I wanted to go Josh Johnson, Josh Johnson was gross, but just couldn't stay healthy. But when he was healthy, was dominant.
And he was like 6'7", 240. Like, the guy was a monster.
Yeah, he was like 6'7", 6'8". Yeah, he was huge. Couldn't stay healthy though.
Yeah.
I wanted to go Dontrell just for the swag factor because I love Dontrell Willis. But Josh Beckett. If I have one game I have to start, it's Josh Beckett.
It's fair.
And then Rob Nen.
And Rob Nen's like, no brainer.
That guy was automatic for a long time.
Yeah. I did put out a lineup myself because Sean's been busy with school. He's doing masters. So I did put out a lineup, and we're fairly similar. I straddled the line at third base. I'm going to be honest. I said Mike Lowell / Miguel Cabrera, can't choose. I literally couldn't.
Don't make me choose. I don't want to.
I flipped the coin and landed, and it was like Mike Lowell, and I was like, nah, I can't do that. Yeah. I'm just putting it.
But that's the easy one where like you just put the other one at DH.
Well, I have Gary Sheffield there.
I know.
Yeah.
And then the other different one I had is I put Derek Lee at first. I understand Jeff Conine is the standard of Marlin. Like, he was there for both.
He's
like,
Mr. Marlin.
Yep. And I don't have him on my list. I have Derek Lee at first, and I have Cliff Floyd in left.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Cliff Floyd. Yeah, that's a good one.
So those were the only changes I had there. And I had Charles Johnson behind the plate. That's a homer pick because when the Sea Dogs first opened up in Portland, he was behind the dish. Like, he was part of that inaugural season in Portland. So Charles Johnson was just like a childhood memory for me, and he was there for quite a while. So
and honestly, like I feel the same way as you, Nick. Like, I always felt an attachment to the Marlins. I saw so many of those guys play in Portland.
Yeah,
saw Hanley come up through there. Saw Charles Johnson come up through there. Like, all those guys came through Portland. We got to see a lot of them, and it was really cool to watch them eventually. We watched Beckett in Portland for a season. It was cool to watch all those guys come up.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Real Muto, you could make a case for Real Muto too behind the plate.
Absolutely.
The problem, and this is probably not fair, but this is the way I look at it when I do. Like, he was on such dog shit teams. Like, those teams were so bad,
and they shouldn't have been.
And he was a fine player, but like JT Realmuto, what we know now was not this JT Realmuto in Miami. Like, he was good. He was a good young player. He was inconsistent at the plate. I mean, he had seasons where he hit like under 220. Like, that's not the JT we know now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Yeah.
No, and the Marlins have had so many good young players come up through there.
Yeah.
Yelich, Anibal Sanchez. Like, you can keep going down the list of all these guys that came up through there. But again, like the Expos, they developed a lot of talent, but nobody stayed.
Right.
Yeah. All right, we'll move to the Atlanta Braves, which I had, and I got a ton of flack for this. Now, listen, before I even put this lineup out, I could put two completely different Braves lineups out and be correct. I feel like at each position, I could come up with 2 or 3 guys that could be at the top. But I got flack right off the top. I went with Joe Torre behind the dish, and I mean, Ken commented and he goes, "Where's Javi Lopez?" I mean, when I watched the Braves, it was Javi Lopez.
Yep.
I actually admitted to him, you know what? I missed that one for sure. And then I proceed to miss the next 9 picks as well. So just stick with me. So
you had some bad picks for your fake Marlins lineup and you butchered the Braves. So
yep, exactly. So you're welcome.
Boy, we really are going to have to carry this show, Sean.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are. At first base, I took Freddie Freeman, and people were like, "Where's the crime dog, Fred McGriff?" And listen, again, I get it, but anyways, moving on. Second base, I had Marcus Giles. I went with Marcus Giles at second over Mark Lemke. Again, I could be biased and just list this entire 90s Braves lineup because they were all there. They were all there year after year after year after year.
So long.
And I watched them all. Like, I get it, but I wanted to be a little bit different. And second base, I remember Marcus Giles like tearing it up, a small guy
So
like
do
Dustin
I.
Pedroia, and he had a ton of pop.
He did. He was fun to watch.
I don't hate that. I would have put Fred McGriff at first. That one I agree with. But
we were moving on from that.
No. But I'm just saying, like Marcus Giles, I agree with that. I like Marcus Giles.
Yeah.
I like the pick.
Shortstop, I went.
Good pick.
I went Jeff Blauser at short. I did really, really bad want to put Rafael Furcal.
Yeah.
Really bad, but he wasn't there long enough for me. Not quite long enough. Blauser was a staple up the middle for the Braves for so long. So that's why I ultimately went with Blauser.
I used to love watching Rafael Furcal, all like 4'9" of him, throw missiles across the diamond. The guy threw rockets, and he was barely taller than the grass.
Even with guys like Matt Stairs running down, like it didn't matter. Everything went over there at 100 miles an hour. It's like, dude, you got plenty of time. Plenty of time.
Oh my god. And he would choke way up and have that little like slap bunt that he would do that would piss infielders off.
It's just unreal. Third base, Chipper Jones, obviously. Larry, got to put him there. Terry Pendleton's no slouch to put there either, but he's not Chipper Jones.
No, and you can't even argue it's not Chipper Jones. Like that's not fair.
Right.
Left field is Rico Cardi. His career with the Braves was insane, and I mean, obviously, I never watched him play, but just looking at his longevity and his stats, I was like, it's every list I looked at, he's like the fifth all-time Braves player.
Oh yeah,
like it was the right pick there. Center field, obviously Otis Nixon.
Otis, my man, Nixon.
No, Andrew Jones. I mean, we're gonna get to him in a minute because I think he's getting slighted in the HOF with all the numbers he put up in his career.
I think he is, just real quick, I think he has the Nolan Arenado syndrome.
I was just going to say,
too easy.
Absolutely.
He's the perfect example of that. He didn't have to die for it because he was already camped out underneath it.
Right. Right field, obviously Hammer and Hank. I mean,
tough to mess that one up.
DH is Eddie Matthews because, I mean, again, another offensive juggernaut. And then starting pitching. Okay, here's where all the crap comes.
Greg Maddux, right? Greg Maddux.
I didn't.
No, Glavine? Smoltz.
Nope.
Oh.
I went Warren Spahn.
You have
the guy did it forever. He owns all the Braves records still, even with Glavine, Smoltz, and Maddux. And he was there from like the Boston Braves all the way to the Atlanta Braves. Like the guy followed the team everywhere because I think he pitched in Milwaukee with the Braves and then moved to Atlanta.
Yeah, the guy won 404 games. 75 of those he won in his 40s.
Yeah,
and he didn't win his first game until he was 25 years old because he served.
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah, so I mean, and then I went with Craig Kimbrell as my relief pitcher.
He was so good there for so long.
Yeah. Again, my love pick would be John Rocker, but that's just me.
Right. That dude was nuts.
I just want to say, after I posted this lineup, I immediately commented after, and I go, Rafael Furcal, ? Ron Gant in his almost 3 consecutive 30-30 seasons. How in the heck do you not put Maddux, Glavine, or Smoltz in there? Yikes, terrible list. So I commented on my own. But, Ken said Rico Cardi not even close in home runs and RBIs. Again, position specific. We've said this for the last 3 weeks. Like there was no better left fielder than him. I did get some flack for not putting Dale Murphy in there. I mean, I get it, but I'm not going to put him over Eddie Matthews.
So the problem is, where do you put him?
Right.
Like if you were building like a 25-man roster, oh, absolutely, Dale Murphy's on there, but who's he going in over? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and then Randy also said he's like multiple MVPs on a losing team. I mean, I get it, but
for who?
For Dale Murphy. Like he
Oh,
was on a bad Braves team,
Yeah,
but he
yeah,
won
yeah.
multiple
was.
MVPs during that. Like, I totally get it, but I don't know where I'm going to put him.
I mean,
You know,
to be winning multiple MVPs on teams that were terrible is really a testament to how good you were, that you got that much attention, although the team didn't win.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got 2 teams left. Harrison, go with your Philadelphia Phillies.
The Phillies. All right. So behind the plate, I had Darren Dalton. First base, I had Ryan Howard. Second base, I had Chase Utley. Third base, I had Scott Rowland. No, I'm just kidding. I put Mike
Obviously.
Schmidt. Sean dared me to put Scott Rowland and let people blow me up, and I'm like, I can't even do it. Like
Dude,
with a straight
I
face,
mean-
I can't put. Scott Rowland might be one of my favorite third basemen of all time. He and Arenado, but you can't take away from Schmidt.
Mike Schmidt's the greatest third baseman to ever play.
Period.
Any
Yeah,
like it's
Yep.
not close.
Nope, it's not close. So Mike Schmidt at third, Jimmy Rollins at short. Another guy I think that got kind of underappreciated for what he did at the time.
Jimmy Rollins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Left field, Del Ennis. Center field, Richie Ashburn. Right field, John Kruk. I took Pat the Bat Burrell as DH. And then I had Steve Carlton as a starter and Tug McGraw as the reliever.
I love that Pat Burrell pick. He was
too.
was such a solid staple in that Phillies lineup for a long time.
He was, and just a nice, smooth swing, a lot of pop.
It seemed to come up in good moments too. Like when it mattered, like it seemed to be a clutch hitter.
Like he's one of those guys. Like the way he walked, the way he swung, like everything he did, he just like looked like a ball player. Always.
Yeah, he did for sure.
Always.
Absolutely. Yeah, a great list. When I think of the Phillies, when I was growing up, it was Darren Dalton, John Kruk, Lenny Dykstra. Those 3 lefties hitting 1, 2, 3. Like I just always remember those 3. But that's just me.
Those teams were fun.
Yeah. All right. I guess we'll just skip the Mets and we'll save them for another time.
Nobody actually cares. The best Mets team might actually be the one they've put together this year because they signed about everybody that's good.
Right.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, Sean, let's see what you got. And then we'll see how bad I messed up your team here.
No, I don't think. Why would you say you messed it up? With what you posted?
Oh, yeah.
No. Why do you say that?
Because Nick's killing it this week. He's killing it.
All right, let's see what you got.
Catcher, I wanted to go with Gary Carter because I love Gary Carter so much.
Yep.
He only played in New York for a handful of years, and there's also a guy named Mike Piazza that was there. And the numbers he put up as a Met, plus the years that he played in New York, it's got to go to Piazza.
Yeah.
So I got him behind the plate, but God, do I love me some Gary Carter.
Did you know that Mike Piazza is the only person with a Mets hat in the Hall of Fame? It said that the only I think that's what I read.
I can't believe that.
No, because Tom Seaver would be, right? Hold on. I must have misspoke.
I
thought I read that somewhere. Anyways, keep going. I'll look it up.
Okay. Keith Hernandez at first. Right. Anyone going to dump on me for that one?
No.
Okay. Wally Backman at second.
Yep.
Good pick.
Which I think you could go with Alfonso. I know there was a poll on Twitter that I looked up, and Edgardo Alfonso got the majority of the vote percentage. Big Wally Backman guy, so Wally Backman.
I mean, and I loved Alfonso. He was a lot of fun to watch, but I think Backman's the right pick there.
Offensively, the numbers, Wally Backman was one heck of an offensive player.
He was, and most people don't think of him as an offensive player.
He was one heck of a player. David Wright at third, Jose Reyes at short. I don't think I'm going to get much flack there. Again, position specific, right? So Cleon Jones in left. They don't win the 69. The Miracle Mets in 1969 don't win without Cleon Jones. Just doesn't happen. So I have him in left. I got Mookie Wilson in center, Darryl Strawberry in right, Carlos Beltran at DH, right? Do you know how hard it was for me not to pick Jacob deGrom to pitch?
I was expecting it.
It was okay. On the record, he's my favorite Mets pitcher of all time.
Yep.
But you can't do it over Tom Seaver.
No.
Like you can't. For like Tom Seaver's, I mean, and the one knock that we have on Jacob deGrom is that he's always hurt. It's the exact opposite thing you say about Tom Seaver. The guy just showed up and just pitched.
Yeah.
Every time it was just like he was, and the numbers are fantastic. He's a Hall of Famer. All this, so it's him. And then relief pitcher, like you could go with quite a few different guys for a franchise that kind of gets dumped on. They've had some pretty good guys coming out of the pen. I don't know. John Franco's one.
Well, I think he's the one people most often think of.
Yeah.
But they've had a few.
They have.
You go back through the years, they've had a few. I'll go with John Franco. I know that's who Nick has. So I'll go with John Franco.
You don't have to go with that just because I went with it.
No, that's not why. I mean, it's a good pick. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, if I throw that roster out there, I'm not losing games because of John Franco.
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
he was a hell of a reliever for the Mets.
I missed who your shortstop wanted. Is it Reyes?
Jose. Yeah.
All right, we had the same exact lineup then.
We did.
I crushed it. Yeah.
Let's hit it. Did we get flack?
No comments on that. So we knocked it out of the park.
No, people only like to beat up on Nick's rosters this week.
I guess
last week it was you, Sean. This week it's Nick.
Last week was fun.
I did misspeak. It's Mike Piazza and Tom Seaver, the only two Mets in the Hall of Fame. So the only two with Mets on their cap.
Yeah.
What I read was Mike Piazza got flack because they thought he should have gone in as a Dodger. So it was what he picked for his hat is what I probably read and just didn't read it. I'll
say one of the other ones that kind of gave me a little bit of pause was left field because we are position specific. And I went with Cleon Jones, who I think, Nick, you said we had the same. You went with him too?
Yeah.
Cespedes would be up there. Cespedes for the short period of time that he was there, like did some serious damage in the middle of that lineup. Like put up some really, really good numbers. Like I just don't know if it was like it wasn't long enough.
Yeah.
And he didn't win a title. Like Cleon Jones, at least he had the title. That's why I went with that. I personally never saw Cleon Jones play. Obviously, saw Cespedes play and loved him in New York. So personally, I would have gone there. But here we are.
No Andy Chavez for that catch.
It was a heck of a catch.
That was about it, though.
Yeah.
All right. So that does it for our NL East teams. We will divvy up the NL Central after the show. We'll post those lineups. You guys can berate us again and tell us we're wrong, or just tell me I'm wrong.
We love that.
It's Harrison's turn next week.
I can take it. I only lose a couple hours of sleep over what you guys say to me, so that's fine.
Yeah, it's amazing. Most of these shows, when we actually end it, we've got to actually console Nick. He's in tears.
Pretty much. Yeah. I call tears panic water, but that's fine. All right. We're going to move on to the rounding third question, which is we put out which team won the shortstop free agency this offseason. And we actually got 3 responses, and all 3 were different, which
good.
All right. So
nice.
Jim said, as much as the contract's going to suck in the last 3 to 5 years, it's got to be the Padres. So he thinks that the Padres won with Bogart's contract because it's probably going to front load, and they're going to get the most out of Bogarts in the first 6 years of that contract. We'll see.
I think I'll say this real quick I think that the numbers that he's going to put up for the first few years in San Diego are going to be fantastic just because look who's around him. Like no matter where he hits in the lineup, he's going to get so many opportunities to drive runs in. And like what we see on what we have seen on a regular basis from him, he's just such a steady professional 300 hitter. It's just what he does. He hits minimum 300. He's going to be his power numbers have gone down a little bit. And whatever, but that lineup doesn't need him to hit 25 bombs.
No.
Like he is going to put up so many RBIs and he is going to have so many opportunities to drive runners in.
And he's going to score so many damn runs too.
his numbers are going to be so good. I think for the first, let's call it 3 years of that deal.
The gap to gap hitter that Bogarts is just gonna completely be exponentially better because of how big the Petco outfield is. You know, like the wall takes away a lot of doubles, believe it or not. You know, there's a lot of balls that he rifles off the wall and he takes a hard turnaround first and has to go back because he's not going to make the double. Like, I mean, yeah, I agree. But you're right. The home run numbers are going to stay down, I think, because Petco is that much bigger. But whatever, they're still going to win that contract, I think. If they get a World Series out of it, they win it.
Petco is one of the 5 most pitcher-friendly ballparks in baseball.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
for a guy like Xander, you're right. The home runs aren't going to be there. He's not going to hit a lot of balls at a Petco because that's a big ballpark. But he's going to dump an insane amount of doubles in the gap and just be running around those bases like he's on a merry-go-round.
Yeah. I mean, you got Machado, you got Soto. I mean, if Tatis comes back, like you've got protection, dude. You're just going to see so many fastballs because, like, who the hell are you going to pitch to? Crazy. Brian said the Twins. Nothing wrong with the physical. Carlos will be money in the next dozen years.
So that would be my pick.
My pick also.
Twins. And then Henry LaRose said the Cubs. And I'm kind of leaning towards the Cubs myself. And the fact that the Cubs are young, Swanson is that centerpiece for them right now. And I think that could be a big deal going forward for the Cubs. Because those young guys are just going to get better. They're going to keep adding pieces. They're on, a very high, steep trajectory to be competitive again. So I think the Cubs won for me.
I think if the question was who won the overall free agency, I think the Cubs are the answer. But if the question is just the shortstop specific, I go Minnesota because you're getting an MVP, Gold Glove, Silver Slugger caliber player for half of the years that the other teams are locked in for. And so everything that we're talking about with San Diego's going to regret the last 4 years of that deal. Guess what? Minnesota won't. Because by the time the regret comes around, he's going to be getting paid by somebody else.
Yeah, fair.
Like, you didn't have to give him the 11 years to get the first 6. You just got him for the first 6.
Yeah.
And you upgraded your pitching, which we talked about earlier in the show. So you've put yourself, if you're Minnesota, you put yourself in a position to get better where you needed to get better. Starting pitching, you got better. You brought back an absolute stud at shortstop, which gave you the ability to get rid of the second baseman, which I don't love the idea of getting rid of him, but it doesn't tank your ball club.
Yeah.
I think the shortstop specific question goes to Minnesota, but overall free agency, give me the Cubs. And I don't know why. It's like Chicago's such a great market. For some reason, it's gone totally under the radar what the Cubs have done. Like, I feel like it isn't getting talked about enough. Maybe we should have spent more time on it, but I think what they've done in free agency is fantastic.
Well, I think we talked about a little bit a couple weeks ago. I think after the Swanson signing, and then again a couple weeks ago, where the Cubs haven't done anything crazy or splashy. I mean, Swanson was a big signing for them, but it wasn't like an insane contract or anything like that. But they've really nicely assembled a team that is gonna work together very, very well and balance out young versus experienced. And when we first asked this question, my initial response was, well, Chicago, Dansby Swanson. That's a good contract. He's very much a stabilizer. He's a glue kind of guy. He was a huge piece of that Braves organization. He's not going to put up the same superstar numbers as like a Correa or a Trey Turner or maybe even a Bogarts. He's not that kind of player, but he's a glue guy, a clubhouse guy. Great defensively, and really will help stabilize that team. But I actually go back, and my final answer to it's Correa for a lot of the same reasons Sean mentioned. But ultimately, this deal with the Twins, 6 years, $200 million, that can become 2 years and $275 if he's performing and he's healthy. If not, he's gone and they're out of there. They're out of there in 6 years and starting over before you get the back of that contract. But if he's still performing and playing every day, then it just continues. And the beauty of it is those 4 extra years only cost them $75 million. So if you're telling me you can have Correa for 10 years and $275 or Xander for 11 and $280, I feel like that math side by side, I'd take Correa because Correa the next 4 or 5 years is going to be better than Xander because he has been. and
has to be.
Well, yeah, and likely will continue to be. I don't think the Twins are going to win anything with him there. I just don't think that team's going to be able to pull it all together in that window because you got too many question marks. I don't know that Pablo Lopez for the swap of her eyes really makes you a better ball club. I think it just moves your problem to a different spot on the field. But I do think that shortstop contract will not be the reason they don't win.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We're going to now head home. So latest news. Before we get into the Hall of Fame stuff, we'll start with just real quick. Artie Moreno for the Angels is not selling the team. Just good news or bad news, Harrison?
Well, and I have to step back and say that, originally we all thought they were selling the team. What they were doing was they were beginning the exploratory process with bankers to decide if they should sell the team. It was presented as though he had already decided. Come to find out, he hadn't decided anything. He was just exploring if they thought there was a market for it, could he get the money he wanted out of it? So they've decided not to sell. I think when Artie Moreno took over the Angels, I think a lot of people, including myself, thought that would be good for baseball. He'd be good for that organization. He's proven time and time again he's not willing to make the commitment that other owners are. So I don't think him staying hurts baseball, but I think the Angels are going to continue to be a team that is amazingly consistently mediocre.
Fair. I mean, that's what they've been since they won the World Series back in what, 2002?
Yeah.
2002.
And he's not, that Mike Trout contract is an albatross. Nothing against Mike Trout. The guy's, one of the handful of best players on the planet ever, maybe, but that's such a big contract to give one guy. They don't have the same depth of financial resources. That market's not good. The Dodgers own LA. The Angels are pretending. They're not going to be able to compete with the teams around them that are working with much bigger budgets in better ballparks in better markets. Yeah. And Moreno's not going to spend the money. He just won't, because he knows he's not going to get there.
Yeah. I mean, you have the two best players in baseball. People are going to come and watch them anyways.
Yeah, exactly. It's an investment to him. It's not a passion. Most of these guys, it's a passion. They want to win at all costs. Moreno looks at it as an investment. As long as he's making money, he'll be happy.
Yeah. If only Steve Cohen would take that approach, right?
No.
Anyways.
No, Cohen is the guy that will win at all costs.
It's crazy. I still look at the numbers that guy's throwing around. I'm just like nuts. Well, I love it.
And thankfully with Correa not going there, his numbers come a little bit closer to, not setting such a big historical mark, but it's still insane that what that payroll is going to look like on day one.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We'll get to it here. The Hall of Fame voting is tomorrow. The 14 players that can come back, I'll read the top 5. Scott Rowland got 63% last year. Todd Helton, 52%. Billy Wagner, 51%. Andrew Jones, 41%. And Gary Sheffield, 40%. Are any of those guys leaping up and getting into the Hall this year?
I don't think so. I think they should. I think Andrew Jones is a Hall of Famer.
No doubt.
But I don't think they will.
I don't understand why Andrew Jones isn't. This is where I'm bringing him back up, because the numbers that this guy has put up in his career are Hall of Fame numbers. I don't understand what the hatred is there for him, or not. Not necessarily hatred. I don't know the word for it, but the non-recognition for him, I guess. I don't get it. What about Scott Rowland? Scott Rowland's a top vote getter, 63%. Does he get enough?
And what's he need to get?
He needs 75%.
75.
So he needs 12 more percent.
I think he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, the guy won 8 Gold Glove awards at 316 home runs. Not putting him in the Hall of Fame is an embarrassment.
Yeah, I think he's a Hall of Famer. I hope he does. How many more years does he have left?
This is his 6th year, so he's got, 20 more years?
Well, technically he's got 4. Then he goes into the veterans committees and all that other nonsense.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
I hope so.
yeah, I do too.
I've seen so many stories of you got writers that are leaving the whole ballot blank. You got writers that are voting for everybody. You got writers saying, well, I'm not going to vote for that person because they don't need my vote, and I'm going to vote for these guys instead. Like, I feel like baseball has screwed up the Hall of Fame process so badly by letting these writers have all this power. There are guys that are clearly Hall of Famers on this ballot that are not getting any respect. And there were guys that were on past ballots that got in that never should have. So it's too much of a popularity contest. It's a lot of these writers. Did they like the player? Were they good to them? Did they interview with them? It's just not the way it should be. And Scott Rowland should absolutely get in. He's, in my mind, he's probably the only guy in that. I'm sorry, he and Andrew Jones. Those are the two guys that are no doubters. They have to go in, period.
Yeah.
If they don't go in, it's a travesty. The other guys, you can make a case. They all have flaws. There's all certain parts of their game that weren't solid, and you can make an argument they don't belong. But Andrew Jones and Scott Rowland have to go in.
Andrew Jones, 62.7 WAR, not quite 2,000 hits, 434 home runs, but he did only hit 254. However, 5-time All-Star, 10-time Gold Glove, Silver Slugger winner. He's got to be in.
That's the one thing that, and I'm not saying that like every time you have a Gold Glove you need to be an All-Star, but how can you have twice the amount of Gold Gloves than you do All-Star appearances? Like
it's a fair point. How do you win a Gold Glove but not get All-Star consideration? Like seriously,
when
but again, it's fan voted,
which is why it shouldn't be held for or against anybody's Hall of Fame resume because it was voted on by Joey Chestnut down the street. Like that, it shouldn't. That shouldn't
stuffing his face with hot dogs.
That shouldn't be the reason.
Well, so let's think about this for a second. So Major League Baseball is allowing the All-Star game to be determined by the fans, and the Hall of Fame vote to be determined by the writers, who you're relying on those two parties to dictate somebody's career. I mean, where do the members of the Hall of Fame, where do those committees get to say to who these guys were and being judged by their peers? They're being judged by friggin' strangers.
And let me be clear about something. I don't care if the All-Star game, at the end of the day, I'm not losing sleep. If the All-Star game is voted on by the fans, so be it. But don't have that tie into, like, don't use that as, well, this person was only, a 5-time All-Star. Like, that shouldn't mean anything. It shouldn't be tied into contracts. Like, there's people that have bonuses in their contracts if they make the All-Star game.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. If I have a contract that says if I make the All-Star game, I get an extra, I don't know, $200K, and I go out and play my nutbag off for the first half of the season, but they think that, the cute little guy down the street, he has never had one, so let's vote him in because he's never had one, and it would be cool to see him there. Meanwhile, I'm out $200K? Like, that's outrageous.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy.
So if you're going to have the fans vote, it should mean absolutely nothing other than just being like, hey, like, good for you, you're popular, the fans like you. Or if it actually matters, if it's going to matter to contracts, if it's going to matter to Hall of Fame resumes, if it's going to matter, then it should be your peers. It should absolutely be a peer-voted players and coaches.
Just like
they should be the ones determining it.
Yep. All right, let's touch on Billy Wagner real quick.
I want to make one quick example just to go back to the Rowland and Andrew Jones thing. Fred McGriff gets elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame via unanimous selection from the Contemporary Committee, yet he never got more than 39.8% of the writers' vote. So 16 of his peers unanimously voted him in, but he never got more than 40% of the vote on the ballot from the writers. Let that sink in for a second. It's mind-boggling. This is where we're at.
Yep.
Crazy. Billy Wagner, 28 WAR. He had a 2.31 ERA. I mean, that's pretty dominating. Over 16 seasons.
Yeah.
I mean,
you could certainly make a case.
Yeah.
You could certainly make a case.
It's 903 innings pitched in his career. And we're a relief pitcher. Yeah. Right? I mean, this is where the specialization starts to bite these guys a little bit. I mean, he threw 900 career innings in, 16 seasons? Yeah.
You're talking, 70, 75 innings a season?
Yeah. But he's 47 and 40 years his win-loss. So, as a closer, 40 losses isn't necessarily
right. The closers are hard. Being a specialist
you're gonna
is
get
tough.
that. Like,
right.
you're gonna
No,
get
I
that.
get
Like,
it.
you're not gonna get many wins.
No,
And
Right.
closers don't get wins. They get
Right.
closes, and then if they blow the save, they're likely getting the loss. So it's like the
Right.
win-loss
get
record
it.
for that
Yeah,
to
and
me.
most of the wins they get, it's a save they blew. The team came back
Yeah,
and won for them.
I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, I get it. But I mean, a 2.31 ERA is
Yeah, I mean,
pretty damn impressive.
Billy Wagner's probably a top 10, top 15 closer of all time. Probably top 10.
Probably top 10.
But in that, but go to the Hall of Fame right now. There's 4 closers in the entire Hall of Fame. Like it's one of those positions that where it's so specialized, it's hard to make a really, really compelling case to put a guy like that in the Hall of Fame. If I had to vote as a writer for Billy Wagner to the Hall of Fame, I probably would not vote for him. Tons of respect for him, loved watching him play, but I just don't know that a top 10 closer is Hall of Fame worthy, because I just don't put a lot of value on closers.
It's fair.
And that's why I still find Mariano Rivera's unanimous decision ridiculous.
Griffey should have been the first unanimous one to begin with.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And then the last one we'll kind of debate here, since he's second on the list, is Todd Helton. We had a career batting average of 316, 369 home runs, 2,500 hits. His entire season, his entire career with Colorado. Is that why we're not in the Hall? Because we played in Colorado? Is that
Probably.
a factor?
Probably.
I mean, he's got better numbers than a lot of guys that went into the Hall. I think the hard part with him is that he didn't, he was a top 5 MVP guy once. He wasn't a rookie of the year. He won a few Gold Gloves. He won some Silver Sluggers. Like his career is very good. Like he had, 2,500 hits and a 316 career batting average and, 369 home runs. Like he was very good in every category, but he wasn't like elite. Played good defense and played for a lot of bad ball clubs out in Colorado. So is he a Hall of Famer? Probably. His numbers probably justify a Hall of Fame case. It's just hard when you look at his stats. It's like, man, that guy was really good, but you don't think of Todd Helton as one of like the top handful of guys from his era.
Okay.
No, you don't. And I like him. If they put him in, I'm not going to be furious. But I mean, 2000, right? He had 216 hits, led the league. 59 doubles, led the league. 147 RBIs, led the league. 372 batting average, led the league. OBP led the league. Slugging, right? That was 2000. Outside of 2000, he didn't lead the league in anything else any other year. Actually,
No.
except OBP 1 year in 2005. But I think, agreeing to what you were saying, Harrison, like it's hard to, when your page isn't littered with led the league this many times in hits and average and OBP and he was good. He was a good player. He was a very good player. But and we've said it on the show before. It's not the Hall of Very Good.
Right.
I don't think you should be in the Hall of right. But I think in a perfect world it's not. But yes. But in this case, with the guys that are in, the guys that have been elected, he's along with those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's in probably the bottom of 10 or 15% of guys that are in there.
Right.
Okay. I lied. I got one more. Gary Sheffield. He hit the 500 home run plateau, right? He's a 292 career hitter. So almost 300.
Gary Sheffield,
2,600
really
hits.
Good. Gary Sheffield, will he? Probably not. Should he? Probably.
5-time Silver Slugger. I mean, MVP 1, 2.
Here's my take.
Top 5, top 3 finishes.
Here's my take on Sheffield. So, Sheffield played for 22 seasons, and many of those were injury shortened. So you kind of factor it down, and maybe you got 17 seasons out of him. He played on 8 different teams.
Yeah,
his longest stay was 6 years in Florida. He spent 6 in Florida, 4 in LA, 4 in Milwaukee, 3 in New York, 2 in Atlanta, 2 in San Diego, 2 in Detroit, 1 with the Mets. He was everywhere. He never stayed anywhere very long. He wasn't a really well liked or respected player. He hit. That's about all he did was he hit. But he never had a home. Like he always kind of wore out his welcome and found himself going somewhere else. And he's got very deep ties to steroids that he's not necessarily admitted, but he's also not denied. His resume is just full of red flags, and I think that's why he doesn't get in, because the writers are going to look at that and go, the guy never had a home, never really made a big time impact anywhere he was. He was just, I mean, he was there with the 97 Marlins. And didn't really he didn't have a great season there, but he was part of that team. He was a guy that never had a spot, never belonged anywhere.
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens if they just get pushed to another year. And then the Veterans Committee. So McGriff is in, right? And then his speech happens this July.
Right.
So
Correct.
There will be one speech, but we'll see if there's any more that will join him.
Well, but
if any of those 5 make it, who has the best chance, do you think? Just real quick.
Rolen.
Scott Rolen. Yeah. Yeah.
I tend to agree.
So to give you an example, so Fred McGriff hit for a lower batting average, had fewer hits, but hit more home runs than Todd Helton. If Fred McGriff gets in, Todd Helton probably should get in.
Agreed.
1,000%.
So, but I think the problem is some of these guys are going to sit in this ballot forever until the Veterans Committee picks them up and puts them, and rightfully puts them in.
Yeah, agree. All right. Anybody got anything else real quick?
No, that was the news.
All righty. So that does it for this week. Please like, subscribe, share our podcast. Like I said, keep a lookout for Apple and Spotify. We're trying to get it all out there, and we'll let you know and post it when we do. We will release our NL Central lineups for this week. And like I said, you guys can tell us we're wrong, and we'll bring it up next week. Or just me. And we'll bring it up next week. So we will see you next Monday at 8 p.m.
See you guys.
See you guys.